What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to another weekly 3D model. This week, we're going to be making a boat. It's definitely been a while since we created some kind of boat on this channel. And I came across this awesome image. It was a boat that was used in the game Call of Duty by a studio named Elite 3D. And I really like this small yacht slash fishing slash sailboat. Not really sure what kind of boat it is. I'm clearly no boat expert, but I really liked it and I thought it'd be a lot of fun to recreate for this week's video, as well as add a few extra things along the way. We also had a Discord challenge, which the theme was water, so it really couldn't be more fitting. Now, this week's video is just going to be a time-lapse speed modeling type of video, but I will go over the UVs later on and explain a few extra things that I decided to add. As always, this 3D model, working files, and real-time video will all be available on my Patreon page, so if you're interested in seeing any of that, you can find it in the link in the description below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more random 3D models. And also, if you want to be part of our Discord community, or possibly would like to join in on other challenges, you can find all of that in the link in the description as well. Alright, so for now, we just need to continue blocking out all the main shapes and slowly start building up our sailboat. And as always, I'm not going to worry about getting everything perfect and dialed in right off the start. This is definitely one of those models that's going to look pretty bad for quite some time, so we just need to continue going at it, refine those shapes as we slowly build it together, and hopefully it will start to look a little bit better the more we work on it. Alright, so enough of me talking, let's just continue creating our sailboat. All right, so here is our sailboat in its finished form. Now, once again, not really sure if this is a sailboat. I decided to add a few extra components like these random sailboat poles that you traditionally find on sailboats. Not really sure what they're called, but the other boat in the reference only had these poles attached, and I thought it was looking a bit plain. In my mind, I wanted to add a lot more rope everywhere, so that's why I added a few extra pieces and turned this more into a sailboat. So I apologize to all of my boat fans out there. You're probably losing your minds over the fact I'm calling this a sailboat, but in my mind, we are going to call this a sailboat. Now, there are a few different things that I ended up adding. So throughout the texturing process, I ended up jumping back into Maya and I added a few extra components that I thought I would go over right now. So one of them was this sign on the side. I basically had this full area here where the door is fitting on the other side, but since there's no door, it's a plain wall, and I thought it looked plain and we can take advantage of that space. So what I decided to do was just add a simple sign, and I put just a sailing quote I found on Google on there. I didn't really know what to add to it, but I thought we should fill in this area with something. I also went ahead and duplicated all the objects on one side of our ship over to the other side. So all of these buoys, and I added a few extra ropes as well. So I added a rope on top just to give it something interesting to look at up here, as well as a few extra rope pieces on the front. And I also decided to add this small paddleboard. I just thought it would be fun adding some other components to the ship. To be honest with you, I really wanted to make a bunch of these technical components, like how these poles are attached, more complicated. And I would love to add more pulley systems. I just simplified everything just because I didn't want to spend more than the weekend, more than a day on it. So what I decided to do was just duplicate a bunch of these little circles, rope pieces that we had just in different spots to simplify how these ropes were attached. But if I were to redo this boat, that's one thing I would definitely add, is some pulleys and some different components that made it look a little bit more technical looking. For example, this pole right here, you could add some cool components that help make it look attached rather than just running the pole into the cylinder and just faking it. So if I had more time, that's definitely an area I would have spent more time creating more objects. But I just decided to add this little paddleboard or whatever you call them on the side, just to make it, once again, more fun to look at. So for the UVs, I decided to break this thing up into 3 different groups for the 3 different textures I had applied. Now, I wasn't confined to any specific poly count or amount of textures because this wasn't being used in the video game, but I did decide to save one on the side so I can show you how I would go about that. And actually, really quickly, I'll just do that right now. So not only would you not be able to use all these ropes in a video game just because they're so dense and high, I didn't really worry about how many polys were on each cylinder, but you could add like image planes, and there's lots you can do to reduce the amount of polys on this, as well as textures. So I only used 3 different textures for the 3 different groups, but you could probably cut this back into 2 different textures at least for a video game, which I think would be more fitting. Now, I did save a different boat on the side here so I can show you. So some of the things that I did do is I first created this lower one, which is all UV'd and ready to go. And then, for example, this hull piece, I just took this and added a smoothing effect. I just went mesh smooth so I can have some smoother edges. So you can create a lower poly model that you can load into Substance as your low poly model, and then you can load in your higher poly model in the high poly option, and then you can transfer all this information from your high poly to your low poly in game. Now, obviously, like I said, this is not game ready or anything like that. It would have to be optimized much more and cut back on a lot of these cylinders and how many polys there are, and some of these bevels around these edges you can just remove completely. But I just really quickly wanted to show you, because I know I'm probably gonna get a question or two about that. But I just decided to smooth out some of these objects, like this wood piece around the edge here, just so, once again, those edges were nice and smooth and they look nice in the render. All right, so back to these UVs. I decided, like I said, do 3 different groups for the 3 different textures applied. So the very first group and texture is the hull. And basically, a few of the extra objects on it, I had some extra room to work with. So I just decided to add those onto the map. Now, once again, I did only UV half of these objects. So these, for example, and then I would mirror those over to the other side to create the other side. So It really just saves me not only space in my UV map for detail and resolution into those final materials, but it just saves me time modeling as well. So I only had to create really half of the ship. And the second group in texture is the top part of the ship. So the main cabin and all those little objects on top of it, as well as the windows. So I did duplicate some of the windows over so you wouldn't see too many repeating patterns. So for example, I think the windows are only taking up like 3 different spots or so, or 4 actually. I had a lot more. So I did move some into a couple different spots, but a lot of them are overlapping. That way you're just once again not seeing the same streak down every single window. And finally, the last group is the mast and the other components on the deck. So all the tiny stuff like the flags, the life rings, and all the rope pieces, they were all just combined into the other texture map. So that's how I prepared this boat or fishing / sailboat for Substance. Now I can export this and we can go ahead and load it into Substance Painter and we can start texturing. And that's basically everything. That is the whole 3D modeling and texturing process that I did to create this old sailboat. Now, I did continue to tweak a few of the settings and change some of the colors, and I did add a few tiny details like that polyrender name on the side of the ship, but other than that, everything is the exact same. I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you did, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to see more random weekly 3D models. A really big shout out to all of my Discord members and to everyone who participated in this challenge. And if you'd like to be part of the community, or you just want to participate in other challenges down the road, you can check out the link in the description below. And as always, a really big shout out and thank you to all of my Patrons. You are all amazing, and thank you so much for all of your continuous support. If you want to see this video in a real-time pace, as well as the whole UV mapping process, or you want to see the 3D model or any of the working files, all of that will be available on my Patreon, which you can find in the link in the description below. Once again, thank you so much for tuning into this week's video, and I will catch you guys in the next one.